Welcome, everybody. I'm back. Welcome to the City Brew Tours Beer Club. I'm Jonathan, and I've got Glenn with me again. I know it doesn't help to point for the podcast, but for the live stream, I always like to point to the right direction.
It's funny
Uh,
because on mine it looks like you're pointing in the opposite
oh,
direction.
am I? Is that
That
right?
on my screen, but I don't know what it's going
Oh,
to look like.
I don't
Maybe what's on
know.
your screen is what's going to show up on YouTube. And
Who
YouTube people
knows?
are laughing at us because they know the answer to this question, and
They
they know
do.
more than we do.
I know. Well, we got it either way. It's perfectly fine.
Yes,
Either
and
way.
over there.
And if you're listening to this on the podcast, it doesn't matter. We are pointing at each other. So, and we're pointing at you because we've got a great city. We've got some great beer. And, this is one that I feel is a long time coming that we've been doing City Brew Tours Beer Club. We've been doing, the Brews Less Traveled. And this is the first time we've ever done this city, and that is Portland, Maine. And you can't have a beer box or a beer subscription service without having beer from Portland, Maine. What have you? I mean, I've had beer from Portland, Maine, not just these ones. How many beers have you had from Portland, Maine, Glenn?
Well, I can't tell you how many beers that I've had from Portland, Maine. I've definitely had a number of beers from Maine. I'm not sure which ones of them are from Portland. Of the three breweries we had tonight, I only have don't my definitive foundation for all of this. I don't know how to work Austin Street into a sentence, but I thought I'd put the other. But my definitive foundation is Untapped. Those of you who've seen me on here before, and if you've listened to my podcast, our podcast, The Beer Vengers, you know that I have over 1,500 unique pours listed on Untapped. And of the three breweries, I found one that I had on my birthday.
Oh,
About just a little less than 8 years ago.
well, there you go.
It was,
Nice.
and I will save that until that brewery's here. I can maybe
Of
include that. But
course.
so, spoiler alert, it's a Foundation beer.
Oh, well, there you go.
But I'm really looking forward, since I've never had Austin Street as well as Definitive, to really to get into all of this and try all of these, the ones we're having here and the ones in my refrigerator.
I
So
know, and
yeah.
it's always a hard thing with, like, we're only drinking two beers on the live stream, and so it's like there's six more beers. Like, I know that people listening, people that are joining us tonight, they've already tapped into these. But it's been a couple weeks since they've gotten the box, and so let us know which ones that you've had and which ones that you are liking. But I mean, yeah, Portland, Maine is known for beer. Even
Have you been to Portland, Maine, Jonathan?
I've been through Portland. I've been to
Okay.
the airport at Portland, Maine.
Okay.
I was going down to New Hampshire and I got rerouted and ended up at the Portland, Maine airport, and then had to drive down.
I think it's the only New England state I haven't been to.
Oh, well, it's a good one.
And
They do have.
it's been on my list for places to go. It's like, oh, I got to go there sometime, but somehow I haven't.
Mm,
Yeah, I mostly associate them with Lobster, Stephen King, and monologuist Mike Daisy.
I mean, that is all very accurate. So I
Yeah.
feel like that's that's all in place.
You
Uh,
might think that word is pronounced monologist, but Mike Daisy always says monologuist, so I feel like I have to say that in
yeah,
honor. Since he's the
monologist.
one I'm talking about,
Yeah,
I'll pronounce it that way.
I feel like monologist is right. But I mean, they are known for their beer, having
Oh
the
yeah.
most breweries per capita. Uh, I will doing tours and doing events. I will always say the most breweries per capita in the United States, but I'm pretty sure it might be even the world.
Yeah.
I know
Wow.
there's some debate on that, but and I think our guests today, they're gonna be able to help correct this. I'm sure they'll agree as well.
All right.
But there's not just beer, not just lobster. There's all kinds of fun things that, when people say Portland, when you hear Portland, do you think East Coast or West Coast?
I mean, generally thinking, I think West Coast, just because I think it's a bigger city.
Okay.
But I know that for sure. I think Portland, Oregon is bigger than Portland, Maine.
I believe it is.
Yeah.
But Portland, Maine was first. And
Oh yeah.
actually, they got the name for Portland, Oregon because the gentleman, there was two guys that were founding it, and they're like, hey, one of them was from Portland, Maine, And he's like, we should
Yeah.
call it Portland. The other one was from Boston. I was like, no, we should call it Boston. And so they did a coin toss and 2 out of 3 won. And now it's Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
There you go. There you go. And I think
I
with,
learned so much from this podcast.
you
I
know,
feel very proud.
I like random
It's
things.
educational and delicious.
And speaking of delicious, let's pop open the first one.
Oh, let's do that.
So we're gonna pop open that Patina Pale Ale from Austin Street. Uh, gonna be just nice 5.3. Ooh, nice little crack there.
Let's
Yep.
see here.
Let's see. Nice hazy.
All right.
Ooh, that's like a super creamy head on there. Ooh, yeah. I actually did a pretty decent pour tonight.
I think I did too.
After doing the Christmas for 12 nights straight and pouring, I think we finally got good practice in it. That's nice. Orange color, hazy. Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, very hazy.
Oh,
All right.
cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, everyone. And you know what? Before we could talk about this, I mean, that's delicious, though.
It is.
You know what? We're going to bring Will Fisher on. We're going to bring Will on. Let's talk about Austin Street. We're going to talk about this beer. There he
There he is.
is. There's
Hey guys, how's
Will.
it going?
Pretty
Not a
good. How you doing, Will?
going good.
Good. Patina here too.
All right, perfect. Yeah.
Patina. The word patina is a word I use in almost every day of my existence. So,
Really, I would say it's not in most people's vernacular, daily vernacular. So, cheers.
well, well, we're in New York City, and I work at the Statue of Liberty, and that green external coating on the statue is called a patina. That's
Yes,
the form that what copper forms on the external when you leave it outside. And
of course.
so, when I say every day of my existence, I mean every day I work, but close enough.
Yeah.
That's actually the what I use in as example when I'm giving tours or talking about this beer when people are asking what patina is.
Yeah.
I use the Statue of Liberty. We thought of it. We're Jake, my business partner, and I are into old cars and old motorcycles that are like rusted and worn and have some natural patina. So that's kind of where the name comes from. But yeah, the Statue of Liberty is a great, and it's a great American symbol. So
It's
Yeah.
funny.
and it's on
I
the East
spend a lot.
Coast.
I spent a lot of time comparing the difference between rust and patina. Like, well, they're both forms of
Sure.
oxidation, but patina is
Right.
better.
Yes. Yep,
So
absolutely.
does patina have anything to do with this beer besides the name? Like there's no
Yes, not especially
oxidization
green.
or rust.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're not putting
I know
rust
it's
in your
kind of
beer.
it's a bit of an oxymoron because the beer is a fresh, hoppy, clean, hoppy pale ale. So it kind of doesn't have anything to do with the beer, except we thought it was a cool beer name and it had some heritage for us and our hobbies. But yeah, nothing to do with the actual beer. It's quite the opposite. So
Nice. And so with Austin Street, how long have you guys been around? And I know you got this great brewery, great beer, and I know like this one is just delicious, and I know other
thank you.
people are loving the stout as well. Kind of. So, what was your journey? Were you guys home brewers, or were you just like, you know what, I'm gonna start a brewery and then just go with it, or kind of what was your guys' journey to not only do a craft brewery but also in Portland, Maine?
Yep, all good questions. I think our stories is I wouldn't say typical of breweries nowadays, but one you hear quite often, which is self-starting home brewers turn brewery owners. We started actually our 10-year anniversary is in April of 2024, so coming right up, and we opened right around the time Foundation did. So I'll be talking to them tonight, and almost a very similar. They're a little bit older than we are. And yeah, my business partner Jake and I started. He was really the lead home brewer, and I would kind of go hang out, and we would home brew on a homemade system in his garage on Austin Street, which is where the name of the brewery comes from. His last name is also Austin, but that's just a coincidence. It is nothing. He just happened to live on a street named after him. And yeah, we started off and yeah, brewing homebrew and having little get-togethers. We actually, if people know Bissell Brothers from Portland as well, we're close with those guys, and they were in the same like homebrew club that we were. So we used to have these like little homebrew parties where we were pouring patina on draft, and then Pete and Noah would bring over like soda kegs with substance in them, and we would kind of enjoy those together. So yeah, it was really, really cool. And we just started, yeah, sharing our beers with other people, and trying to get some good feedback from folks. So when you share homebrew with your friends, or if you share homebrew with your parents are like, oh, you're doing such a great job, and like you're not really getting the feedback you need. So going to breweries that are already open, like Oxbow Brewing here in Maine, and bars like Novari Res, and talking to people like Shaheen and saying, hey, what do you think about this beer, and taking that feedback. And yeah, long story short, we got started, and started with our own money and got things rolling, and here we are today. So
Yeah, because you guys are obviously 2014, 2013 was really when brewing or breweries started to really pick up in the Portland, Maine, Northeast area. But you guys are officially like one of the first breweries at that time to be fully self-funded, correct?
yeah, I'm not sure of other people's entries into the business, and I don't necessarily tout it per se, but we because what we did was we set aside $30,000, and we ended up spending a lot more than that. So I I I remain, so it's not really something to brag about, but always write a business plan, no
Yeah.
matter, even if you have your own money to start, always write a business plan. But yeah, what's cool about Austin Street is that we've retained ownership. So John, or excuse me, Jake and I still own the business 50/50, which is really cool.
That's cool.
And that means that we don't always have like mentors and things like that to always lean on. Maybe we're a little bit slow on fundraising and getting out loans versus like using people that are able to like put us a line of credit and stuff like that. So, but I think the slow growth is good for us, and it leaves us time to make decisions and do the right thing, and try to be intentional with the beer and what we're doing. So.
And that really allows you to be really part of the community, grassroots. You're truly a grassroots brewery at that point. Because anyone can, get some investor, and stuff and come in and then, but really starting from that ground up, that's, especially with how many breweries are in Portland, especially now, really allows that community and that kind of that partnership, which I think is unique for a lot of breweries nowadays.
Yeah,
Yeah,
what is
Portland.
the current number? Because my numbers go back to 2020. And at that point, the number of breweries in the whole state of Maine was 136, but I don't know if that seems right or
I
not.
John probably knows better than I do, but I think we're like 165, maybe now, maybe pushing 170. And then Portland, that's for the state. And
Yeah,
as far as I know, like you said earlier, I think we're the highest per capita in the country as a state. And I think
push you push
Portland
past
maybe
Vermont.
is, yeah, and I think Portland may be as well, based on city size. But I don't really know about Portland. I would guess there's probably 25 maybe in
Yeah,
Portland, but for maybe more. I'm trying to be conservative, but there's it's 100,000 people, so there's a lot of beer to drink, a lot of
yeah.
tourism too. We have a lot of people coming
Yeah.
in from out of state, which is great. So
Yeah, because that's like here in New York, like in the five boroughs, we have like 45, but we're also 9 million people. So
Yes,
yeah,
like
we're never going to win the per capita
we're
race here.
never, yeah. So it's
no,
like, yeah, we have more,
good
but
luck.
never, yeah, yeah.
If you
And
have a
our,
small number of people and a lot of room for breweries,
yeah,
it just
Yeah,
you're gonna work that better.
yes, yeah, it's tight down there. We have some friends in New York breweries, and it's looking at like on packaging days and stuff like that. It's pretty wild. You have like the canning lines like halfway out in the street, and
yeah,
police are writing them tickets and stuff. It's quite a ride. So
yeah. It's very, very, very different. What was it like starting like back in 2014? Because I know a lot of breweries started, 08 or so up in kind of in the Vermont area, but with the hazies especially hitting the market, did you guys go straight into that as well, or did you guys try to just like keep a diverse kind of palette of beers or tap list?
that's a good question. Yeah, we kind of, I think there's a wave. There's definitely a class, we'll call it, of brewers from that era. or those couple years. Foundation is one of them. Bissell, we all actually started in the same building within a few months of each other, unplanned. We just sort of, there was available leases and we moved in. But that same building also is where Rising Tide Brewing started in that building. Maine Beer Company started in that same building. And so there was a lot of history there. And one of the first breweries that Jake and I really kind of got us interested in this style of beer, which is essentially unfiltered, heavily dry hopped, and consequently very hazy beer, was Maine Beer Company. We actually went to visit them. Jake did some photos for them very early on, and we met the brothers, and we drank. It was called Spring Peeper Ale, and now it's called Peeper. And most people know that brewery from dinner. They're double IPA, and
I'm a
we
big
drank
fan
this
of
beer.
lunch.
Yeah, and lunch is awesome too. Lunch is huge. And we drank this beer. We're used to buying like, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale and a lot of like sea hops and like pine and earthiness and a little bit of crystal malt, right? And the color and the bitterness of the beer. And we have Spring Peeper Ale, which is, I think, basically all two row and West Coast hops, but some more modern varieties. And we're like, wow, this beer is like super light in color. It's hazy, and they don't seem to be worried about that. And it's just like nice punchy hop aroma and like super crushable, and it's a great ABV. And it just was such a cool beer, and we're like, we should start playing around with this kind of style, and that's really where Patina was born. So to answer your question, Patina is our flagship from day one. It's about almost 60% of our production. It's a huge beer for us, and we love it. It's just a great beer, and we're grateful for it. And we started off with basically Patina and Six Train, the two beers you guys have, and they still hold strong. They still hold up. It's the same recipe. They haven't been thinned out. Just we've changed yeast over the years, different house yeast and things like that, to kind of switch the beer up. But yeah, we're just cranking it out, and our lager program has grown over the years. We also have a wild program, which has actually slowed down a bit. So lagers picked up. The wild program slowed down slightly, but we still have a couple of Brett beers that we do regularly. So we like a little bit of everything. It's kind of that annoying thing where you're like, ask someone what kind of music they like. They're like, I listen to everything. I hate to like use that as an answer here, but it's pretty accurate, I would say. So.
Well, I imagine if the two of you, it's still your business you're doing it, but I'm assuming you brought in, you probably have a team of people, and some people are better at different styles than others.
Yeah, we've grown. We're actually not as big as people think we are. So we have typically, I'd say around here, we have 2 locations in Portland where we're at 16 employees. So we're not a huge operation, and that includes both tasting rooms. That includes our management team, leadership team, production people. We have a really experienced, capable group of people that work together very well, and we have besides Jake, my business partner, who's really brewmaster. We also have a head brewer and a brewer, Dylan and Marley, and a great packaging team and a great front of house team, and they get it done. So they all bring a lot of great experience to the brewery for sure. So
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Because when I do tours and stuff at breweries, people are always like, how many people are on like a brew team? I'm like, well, it kind of depends. And you guys are being very efficient with it if 2 tap rooms, 16 people, including your brew staff, that's keeping it nice, tight, and working hard. That's really what it
yeah.
comes down to.
It's a
Which
fun size too. It's like you're not, I like the size of the business right now, and we talk about growth, and we're always looking for like new areas to move the beer into, but we don't want to force the beer down people's throat either. We want people to want our beer before we get to their city, and that's just never really been our thing. And it's a fun business to run. It's a great size, and it's Jake and I are there almost every day, just like John and his partners are at his brewer. I know that as well. They're very dedicated to their team, and they're in there. When I see John, who you'll talk to next, he usually got overalls on and boots, and he's doing his thing. And so I'm out there doing something, and yeah, we're very much involved. And I think that's one of the reasons why we enjoy it so much.
And with like being cautious of where you're shipping to, what is your guys' kind of footprint? Are you guys only in Portland or in Maine, or do you guys go to the further northeast, or are you guys shipping it out all the way. I know you're not going all the way west, but kind of
Nope.
for all of our listeners, kind of where can they expect to find you guys, or do
And
they
for
have
us
to?
as well, because
And what?
I love
Yeah.
this beer, and I'm really looking forward to having that stout. That's I like all kinds of beer too, but mostly stout. Uh,
Cool.
but this one is I'm really enjoying this one a lot. It's got that nice hop forward but a clean finish. But yeah, I'm looking forward to if where I can go if I want to find the Austin Street beers.
Yeah, great question. So we have a full state distribution in Maine, of course. New Hampshire, for those that don't know, is the borders Maine. It's actually the only state that borders Maine. We're surrounded by ocean in Canada. Nice big hug from the Atlantic in Canada. And then Massachusetts as well, which is just south of New Hampshire, and Rhode Island, very small but great state just below Massachusetts. So that's where we distribute with traditional, wholesale distribution. But you can go on our website, austinstreetbrewery.com, and you can buy our beer on our online store and have it shipped to your house. So as long as your state is cool with it, which is about 42 out of 50 states. I don't know
Okay.
the eight. I didn't memorize the eight that aren't cool with it. I'm pretty sure one of them is North Carolina or Georgia.
It's Georgia.
In dry states, and I think there's some dry counties in some of those states too. I totally get it. But yeah, go online. You can order. Patina's available right now. I think Six Grain's on there as well, and we rotate through different beers, and that'll actually ship right to your doorstep. Yeah, so go out there and get it.
That's
I
actually
I have
really
a
cool.
feeling New York might unfortunately be one of those eight as well. I don't know. Do you know, Jonathan? Because a lot of times New York it has to be like a middleman and like direct from other state breweries. I would sometimes have a hard time getting mail order for that.
Yeah, it's a 50-50.
Yeah.
I think from a brewery it's not allowed, but from a distributor it is. So like you can get it from like Tavor or
Right.
from like Drizzly, from not that Drizzly does out of state, but you can
Yeah.
get it from them, but like ordering it from or from City Brew Tours Beer Club, you can get
That's
those
true.
shipped to New
Yes,
York.
exactly. That's one of the best things about City Brew
So,
Tours Beer Club
so
is to get stuff you can't find near you,
yeah.
and also give
Sure.
you wonderful places to go visit. Because I say this every single time. I'm very unoriginal, but now I want to go visit Portland, Maine.
Yeah.
I did already, but now I
Yeah,
have
come
yet
on up.
another reason.
Yeah.
And speaking of New York, we do work with a distributor in New York where we send down a couple mixed pallets. So usually a couple pallets of half barrels of Patina, and then a mixed pallet of stick stills and a mixed pallet of cans. And we do that every couple of months. So
Oh, cool.
we're definitely in the city. Where Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens is generally where our stuff ends up. But keep an eye out for it around the city and all the popular craft beer spots. You'll find us down there. So that's been pretty cool. We started doing that kind of twice a year. Now we're doing like every other month, and we've got a great partner down there. So it's awesome, and it's cool. The reception is great. We send the beer down, it disappears, and people are obviously enjoying it, which is really cool. So
Yeah, that's one of the fun things is when there's breweries like you guys that you don't do major distribution, but then you'll pop into a bottle shop and you're like, oh hey, I haven't had this one before. Or like
yeah.
I know those guys, but like what are they doing here? And so that's always really fun. So it's cool that you guys have that partnership now to be able to get it to New York, because not only does that mean that you can get people from the city, but with everyone visiting and a lot of people are starting to go outside of like the popular pubs and stuff and going to like the craft beer bars, the bottle shops, and trying to go to more like local spots, I would
Hmm.
say, but like
Hmm.
off the beaten path. And so that inadvertently helps even you guys of now they're like, oh, this is a really good beer. And then they're like, you got to get it from Portland, Maine. And now they're going to come to you. So it's kind of a fun little byproduct to, I want to say that like I started that. That's not my idea. It's been happening for decades. But
I just did a quick cursory search, and I don't know how many of our listeners are in New York, but I immediately found that I can get a can of Patina at a place just off of the 7 train on Queens Boulevard. So
oh,
yeah,
nice.
And
Nice.
yeah, you definitely can order. You definitely can have beer shipped in New York as well from us, because I know that
oh
like
great.
because we have Maine blocked off because we're distributed here. But when I go in to like check in on the store, I use a New York zip code to get in.
Oh, great.
And it
Oh,
always
there you
lets
go.
me in, and it's
So,
like, what do you want to buy? So yeah,
yeah. So
I
New
don't know
York's
whose it is,
good.
but it's someone's zip code in Brooklyn. So
New York's good. I know Maryland's not, which is a weird one, but you know,
Yeah.
what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?
what are you gonna do?
So I know my beer's going down, and I know everyone else listening is probably starting to get thirsty and wondering who this John guy is that we've been talking about. So, Will, is you guys have been on this journey. You guys are still, you have 2 tap rooms. You're still brewing awesome beer. What's next for Austin Street? And like, what do you guys want to plug? Like, what's in the future for you guys?
That's a really good question. A lot of folks, as taste rooms are changing over time, like our customers are changing. For example, when Jake and I started this business, I was 31 years old. I'm 41 now. A lot of our friends have gotten married and have children, and so our customers are looking for a different experience in the tasting room. So for us, it's really staying true to the Austin Street brand, the beers that we brew, the quality, the consistency, but make sure like that we're able to adapt and provide a really good experience for our guests. And that's the most important part about the Austin Street experience is the tasting room. The beer is also important as well, but that's part of the experience of visiting. So if you're ever in Maine, come by either of the tasting rooms and say hi, meet our team, check out what we have going on there. And yeah, if you're interested in getting more beer from us, hop on our website and you can order to have it shipped to your house. And for the future, we'll see. We don't have a food program yet. We talk about that a lot. But we're focused on beer and haven't really been pushed into the food sector yet. But we know our customers really enjoy having a consistent food option for us. But otherwise, we have a really great rotation of food trucks every day, which is pretty typical for tasting rooms. But Portland's one of the best culinary cities in the country. Plenty of James Beard love up here, and the food trucks are definitely in line with the restaurants. So it's a cool spot to visit, and Maine's just great. So I grew up here, and so did Jake, and yeah, I love it here. And it's snowing outside right now, and then these beautiful summers. So yeah, come by and visit.
Before we let you go, I do have to ask one question. What beer would you pair with a lobster roll?
Oh
I'm
boy.
going very Maine. I'm going very Maine. I'm sorry.
No, that's great. I mean, I love lobster. I eat a lot of lobster, so it's been 41 years of a lot of lobster, a lot of fried clams, and basically everything that comes from the sea. Um, let's see. I think if I had to pick an Austin Street beer, I would pick Rally, which is our 100% Mosaic hopped session IPA. It's 3.8%, 2 row, 100% Mosaic, West Coast Mosaic, and just like super fruity and not too bitter, light haze. It's just great. It works really well with food. And if I was just grabbing something simple, I'm a Modelo guy. 12-ounce cans of Modelo. You can't go wrong. So all day.
You know what? Yeah, I'm with you with that. It's a good food beer. I'll be
Yeah.
honest.
It's a
It's
great
just
food beer.
it's a good food beer.
It's consistent. It's great. You can count on it.
Yeah. I wouldn't go Negro Modelo with like lobster, but like with spicy food, like a really
Mm,
spicy taco and hot sauce, Negro Modelo is like my go-to.
yep. Yep.
It's just a Vienna
I
lager.
don't know why. I don't know why I'm thinking a red ale.
Oh, I don't
Red
know.
Lobster.
That's just
Red Lobster.
yeah.
Yeah, there you go. A red lobster, a red ale with a red
I mean,
lobster.
anything in the amber family, I think might work well for it.
Yeah.
They're kind of green or brown before they're cooked, and then they turn red. It's always like people have like
Yeah.
pictures of lobsters. I'm like, that's just a bunch of dead lobsters because they're all red in all the pictures. It's a prettier color, but I'm like, that's a dead lobster.
That's yeah. Now you're making me hungry. I don't get good lobster in New York, but that is what it is. Cool. I mean, anyone in the chat, if you still have questions, Will, thank you for the beer. Thank you for hanging out with us.
Yeah,
If anyone has questions, Will, you can keep hanging around. But
yeah,
I
I'll be here.
know
Yeah, hit me up.
John's John's been patient, so we're gonna bring John on because I'm also thirsty. And Glenn, are you still thirsty?
I am still thirsty. I mean, I've got a little bit of this patina left, but I have another glass, so it's all
I
perfect. So
Me too.
and
How is
and
that
and
convenient?
coincidentally enough, if you want to segue in this way, my personal foundation story has lobster as part of it.
Oh, really? There you
Yeah.
go.
So,
Nice.
should we let John talk first, or could you want to well, we can tell that story. Let's get John in the
Let's
mix
get
first.
John in,
Yes,
but
yes.
John, welcome.
See you guys
Uh,
Thank you.
later. I'll be
dude,
here to answer questions and just kind of hanging out.
yeah.
Nice to meet you both. And
Thank,
how you doing, John? Good to see you.
Good to see you, Will.
thank you, Will, so much.
See you guys.
All right. Yeah. No, John, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for hanging out, chilling in the first part while we were drinking that beer. But now we're gonna crack open that Epiphany.
Right
Uh,
on.
I'm
Yeah,
always a good fan. You can't have Portland, Maine, and not do a New England IPA. I mean,
that
that
makes
just
sense.
it feels like that would be sacrilegious of being like, we're gonna do Portland, Maine. We're gonna do a sour. Um, you know, there you go. Oh, nice.
Well, I unfortunately don't have an epiphany. My older son is a senior at Purdue and was home over the holidays, and just went back a few days ago, and I realized he cleaned me out. So when I went to go grab a beer, I was like, "Oh, great. Okay." Fortunately, I still have this Joseph. This is our Czech pills.
Oh,
So I
nice.
had that in their fridge. And I was like, "All right, I'll grab this guy." So
Nice. That's perfectly fine. All right. Oh, this is a lovely color. That's a
And of
beautiful
course,
head on there.
maybe some of the other people in the box have tried some of your other ones that we sent them, the Snowsuit IPA or the
mhm.
Riverton Flyer, both of which I'm very curious to try. But for
I'm
now,
I'm very excited about the snowsuit IPA. Oh, that's delicious. That's
oh
delicious.
yeah, it really is.
Nice, sweet. You get that good little bitterness, but
I don't know why I said that like I was surprised. I'm like, oh yeah, it really is. No, of course
no,
it's good.
of course it's delicious. No, we're not gonna be like, John, yeah, so this beer's fine. We'll talk to you later. No, no. So yeah, John, welcome. Um, what do you want to tell us about this beer with the Epiphany? Was there an epiphany when it came to making this New England IPA?
Yeah. So I mean, I think the first thing about Epiphany was we first started making this beer. First batch we made and released on New Year's Eve, 2014. So you're talking with Will. He opened Austin Street opened, I think, in April. We opened the last week of February. So we were 2 months ahead. And then Pete and Noah at Bissell were literally like we all share a wall originally. And so and we still share a wall with Austin Street. Pete and Noah moved on to Thompson's Point, which is a different part of town. But yeah, they opened. So Bissell opened 2 months ahead of us. So we were all within, like I said, 4 months of each other. We all opened around the same time. When we first opened, um, like tasting rooms weren't really a thing. Our original tasting room, it was 150 square feet. Our whole concept was, oh, we'll fill growlers or whatever. But back then everyone was doing everything through distro. It's pretty much that was the only way that beer was sold at that point. And so, but also when we opened, you couldn't get any of the cool, sexy hops. There was a hop shortage. There really wasn't anything that you could do. My partner Joe Mahaffey and I, we actually met at a homebrew club in Bangor. So at that point, when we met, he was living up in Bangor, Orono, actually, just north of Bangor, which is the University of Maine, and I was living in town, Waterville, which is where Colby College is, and so we met at a homebrew club there, and eventually decided to open Foundation. So kind of how Will was saying, the Portland scene homebrew club launched definitely a few breweries out of that. The one we were in Bangor, I think 7 breweries came out of that. Maybe 8, so Orono Brewing, us, the guys at Marsh Island, I'm gonna forget people, but anyway, but yeah, it was it was one of those things where, and Maine's the kind of the joke in Maine is it's a small town with long roads. So especially if you work in an industry, everyone knows everyone else. There's really never more than 1 degree of separation. And so anyway, when we opened, we ended up down in Portland in no small part because we couldn't find space that sort of fit the criteria that we were looking for. And we had planned to move. I had worked and lived in Portland before. My wife and I were planning to move back to Portland anyway. So it just kind of worked out. And so we when we opened though, we're like, great, okay, we got our space, we got all this stuff. And then we were like, let's go, try to get the hops, and you just couldn't. So anything that was Mosaic, Citra, just impossible to get. And so we sort of pivoted a little bit when we were talking about opening, and we really wanted to focus more on yeast-driven beers. So Belgian-style saisons, things like that. The fact you could throw a rock from our place and hit Allagash, it's like literally I walk out my front door and I'm like, oh, there's the tanks for Allagash right there. So Maine was receptive to that. Oxbow, I think, had opened a few years ahead of us. So our initial plan was, when we first opened, we really focused on doing saisons. We loved the variety and the kind of open to interpretation, as long as it was dry, and crisp and well carbonated. You could really interpret a saison a lot of different ways, from clean to funky to fruited, spiced, all sorts of things. So in a milieu where we're like, well, we can't get the hops, we're not going to dive right into doing IPAs and things like that. We really focused on that, on really the saison side of thing. But then that summer, this would have been in 2014, summer of 2014. We were finally able to start getting some like spot purchases of some of these hops. And so we finally got enough. I think we had like 4 boxes of Citra and 4 boxes of Mosaic. And we were working with a guy named Paul Allard, who's works with Willamette Valley Hops. He's a local guy, but he represents most of the East Coast. And Paul had access to some Australian hops. And so we were playing around with some of these things. And long story short, I'm like, we should, if we're going to do this, let's just do it. Let's just throw everything we have in a beer. And so we sort of jumped from doing a single IPA right to a double. I also, part of this too was when we first opened, the term New England IPA, hazy IPA, really didn't exist. It was everyone knew Heady Topper. I had first had that camping in Vermont in 2012. And
okay, so it existed, but they weren't calling it that yet?
Yeah, the term New England IPA didn't. In 2014, if you said New England IPA, people have been like, what? It was you sort of had East Coast IPA, but that actually had more of like a British connotation to it.
Okay.
So something more like Harpoon, I think would have been kind of like one of the benchmarks for that. And then you had sort of West Coast IPAs, which Maine Beer Company sort of jumped on up here as far as their style. Those guys are also originally from Michigan, where actually I grew up. And so we both grew up drinking Bell's. So Two Hearted and that type of stuff came out when I was in college. And and that's more of a, I would say that's definitely a little more West Coasty. It's probably a little more malty than what you get. And that's, West Coast too. When you say West Coast, are you in the northern part where it tends to be a little more malty? Are you down in San Diego where it tends to be a little bit drier? There's all sorts of different interpretations on that. But we sort of, the other beer that I absolutely adore, and kind of my poster child for what a West Coast IPA should be, was Double Jack from Firestone Walker. And so we loved everything about how that balanced. Preferred Double Jack to Union Jack. I feel the bigger body, the higher ABV, it just sort of worked a little bit better. And so really the concept was, well, we got these hops. We kind of like some of the stuff, like we really like how Double Jack drinks, but we really love the nose and that sort of explosive flavor that you could get out of Heady Topper at the time, or still can, but it's a very different hop profile than I think people are expecting if they haven't had it before. It's definitely a little more old school. And so we're like, all right, let's marry these things together. And that's really where Epiphany came out. Was, well, we got these things, we sort of had these concepts, we sort of had these ideas, and we sort of mashed them together, and it worked pretty well. I think it's fair to say. And so what's been interesting is, like, we've been making this beer now for almost 10 years. It'll be 9 years. And Epiphany just had his 9th birthday, actually, on New Year's Eve. And so we were looking at, trying to kind of mash all these concepts and all these different things together. And that's where the beer came from. The name sort of came out of that. It's originally, like, people would come into the brewery all the time and they're like, we want your Vermont IPA. And we're like, cool, this is Maine. Like, I mean, it's because that's sort of what Epiphany kind of became known as. And so it was, I think, it's kind of a precursor, forerunner of what has continued to evolve into New England IPA, Hazy IPA, kind of moving down those paths. But
and of course,
I
this
think,
is even more special because it's a double IPA.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the higher ABV helps with with the extraction. So I think you get better expression of the oils and from the hops. So that was actually one of the things we talked about was, what should the ABV of this be? And so we thought going, and Heady Topper at that point, both Heady Topper and Double Jack were 8%. And so we're like, okay, that seemed to be a pretty good sweet spot. But I think the thing we always have focused on, and one of our big things at Foundation, is, can you have a second pint? Is it not from a ABV standpoint, but is it too filling? Is it too sweet? Is there enough balance to it? And I think that's one of the things that we always think about when we make a beer is, okay, what's the second pint like? What's that second pour going to be like? Is that something that someone's going to, really house and enjoy? And to me, the mark of a great beer is a beer that's just gone without you thinking about it. You're talking to your friends, you're chatting, you're doing all that stuff, and then you're like, oh, it's empty. I guess I got to go get another. Where you see people and it just lingers, and you're like, okay, and that's usually when like the balance isn't right. Something's a little off. So that's where we always, whenever we make a beer, that's one thing we always try to think about is not just the flavor profile and the mouthfeel. I mean, we have a whole process where we write up, like, what is the vision for the beer? These are the things we're looking for. This is what we're trying to accomplish. But one of the things that we always look at is, can you enjoy a second pint without thinking about it? And if you can check that box, then I think you got something. If it's something that's just too thick, too heavy, too, like the old, I have more IBUs than you do, 800 IBUs, and it's like smoking a cigar before you like go have a nice dinner. It's like, well, can't really taste much right now. I don't really smoke cigars. The last time I think I did was at my buddy's bachelor party 20 years ago. But that's exactly what happened. Was we went out to dinner and I'm like, I can't taste any of this. So I've found, like, some of those really hyper hopped, really super aggressive beers just kind of blow out your palate. And
well, that's one of the things that I really like about double IPAs is that because it has the higher IBU, but there's something about that process that gets it to double that makes the IBUs go down easier.
Yeah,
you're saying you don't want it to be too sweet, although I think this has just the right amount of sweetness. So yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. To your point, it's balance. Can you find the balance point, right?
Right.
And I think like I said, when you talk to brewers or people, you mentioned Modelo earlier. I mean, that's, I think, a classic example of a beer that's just, it's a really well-made beer because it just goes down so easily.
Yeah.
You don't really think about it. And so you're crushing some tacos, you grab a Modelo, it just works. And so I think sometimes we overthink what we're doing. And really it really is just about, are you enjoying it? Is this part, and does the beer fit into the experience around you? Is it complementary to that, or is it something that's sort of creating some dissonance? And so, yeah, that's one thing. Like I said, we always think about that from and to me, the answer to that is, are you going to enjoy a second pint as much as the first one?
I think that
That's
is
right.
a perfect like ideology for any beer of, when you're brewing it, of like, are you going to drink a second pint? Because a lot of times when I look like at a double or like a triple IPA, I'm gonna be like, yeah, I'm only gonna have one. I had a night many years ago where I had like multiple triple IPAs back to back, and my palate was wrecked. By the
Mhm.
third one, I was like, what am I drinking at this point? Literally give me a PBR and it's going to taste the same at this point. Because it's like that's like that cigar, your palate is just full of bitterness and you can't taste it. But I think this one especially, it's sweet, it's bitter, it's balanced. I'm already halfway through it, which, as you're saying, talking, drinking, it's like, yeah, this is good. Let me just take another sip. Let me take another sip. Let me take another sip. And it's going to be gone very soon. But
And
yeah,
I
I
would
think
say that the bar for whether you want to have two of these is even stronger in a world where if you're at a place that there's like five different things you want to try, the bar is so much higher for will I have this twice, because you want to try everything.
exactly.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I
No,
mean,
and
variety is the spice of life, definitely.
I'm like when I go to a new brewery, I will often, or a brewery that's new to me, I will often. That's what I love about flights. Is like I know I'm going to want a full pour of at least one of these, but I have to try my top five, four or five for a flight to narrow it down.
Yeah, we actually a lot of breweries got away from doing flights during the pandemic or after. We went back to it pretty soon, as soon as it sort of made sense for us to do so. And that's still hands down. So well, we serve Epiphany in 13-ounce tulips. So we do
Yeah.
pump the brakes a little bit. But that being said, right after the 13-ounce Epiphany, our number two seller is flights. And that's always been, you get a chance to try different things to kind of, and that's one thing, as Will was saying, I think a lot of us who sort of opened up around the same time, so roughly 10 years ago, and I was thinking like Zach Kinney at KCBC, he and I were in brewing school together, and and things like that. So like, there's a whole bunch of us that sort of like kind of all sort of came around at the same time, and I think we at that point we're also all coming out. Most of us were coming out of this out of sort of homebrew clubs and things like that,
Mhm.
and so exploring classic styles, trying all sorts of different new things, sort of really trying to, I think, understand the breadth of beer. Living here in Portland, Navarre is just, was a great opportunity to go in and try different things that you will often only see in Europe, um, and things like that. And so, but I think that experience, you'll find a lot of people sort of our that open around that same time tend to have really diverse tap lists. Tend to really like, we make a brown ale. We've made a brown ale Burnside for
That's the one I've had. That's
there
the
you
one I
go.
had in 2016 on my birthday. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean
And
that
I don't mean that as a segue into my story, because I actually, there's one part of your story I really want us to get to, because I was looking on your website today and I see that a big part of what you guys do is pizza. So food pairing, I think, is a really important thing that we talked about. All these breweries have food trucks, but you don't have a food truck. You do pizza there. And how did that evolve?
Yeah, I mean, so like I said, I grew up originally in Michigan. I went to college, went to University of Michigan, and then in my prior life, I'm actually a physician. So I ended up working. I ended up in Maine because I did my residency at Maine Medical Center in family medicine. And when I met Joel, I was practicing at a hospital in Waterville, Inland Hospital, which is now part of Northern Light. But anyway, did that and was doing that at the time. And really, though, like I said, I got into beer in college, and I graduated in '96. And a couple of my college roommates worked at this great sort of divey bar, but has like 250 beers in Detroit called Yield Tap Room. So whenever I go back to Detroit, I always try to get over there. But really had a chance to kind of learn from them. And so coming forward, when we opened up, as Will was saying, there's this definitely evolution with tasting rooms, and we're still in the same location. We only have we're just one location, but fortunately we have the space where we were talking about, and this sort of came out of the pandemic. We had a great relationship with a bunch of food trucks beforehand, and a lot of them then moved on to brick and mortars, which was awesome because then they became customers, and we're friends with all these people. But we found that during the pandemic, it just it was really challenging to try to make something consistent and have something that was there that you could rely on. And I think when you're running your business, there comes a point in time where you have to, like, we either need to own this, or we need to figure out some solution to this problem. And so plus in Maine, we're so seasonal that this time of year I think Will gets food trucks pretty regularly, but usually January, February, it's cold out there. And so most of those guys take the winter off.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what Maine is. It's like it's a combination of the summer people and the townies, right?
Yeah, I mean we'll yeah, yes, and so for us in the wintertime, our population drops significantly. We'll get 16 million visitors to Maine in the summer, but the state has a population of 1.3 million. And so, when you look at it, and that's dispersed through the whole state. So, Portland's southern two counties. So Portland is in, and so Cumberland and York County, where Portland's in Cumberland, is 70% of the population. So most of the population is in the south part of the state, but it's still geographically pretty spread out. And so in the wintertime, you just don't have that population density. And so, like I said, I get it. Between the weather and just the fact that there's just not as many people around, the food trucks will tend to, hey, we're out of here, or they'll go to the mountains and they'll work on the ski resorts. So so we came out of that. We decided, this is something that we kept talking about. Should we do this? Should we not? And so we decided, yeah, let's move forward. We're going to do a kitchen. Then, of course, the next question was, what are you going to do? Well, my business partners are vegetarian. And so whenever we get together and sort of have it's just, I mean, the ownership is my wife and I and our business partners, Joel and Christy, and that's it. So usually business meetings involve a large pizza sitting around a kitchen table and a couple of beers. And so
best combination, really, pizza and beer. It's classic.
If anyone ever figures that out. But yeah, it's, don't mess with it. I mean,
I'm sure there is some science to it. As a doctor, I'm sure you would know some of the science. I'm sure it's not entirely a mystery, but yes. But that is, a lot of us, when we first started beer, we would have it with pizza. It was just, it's classic.
Yeah, it's a classic pairing. It's sort of like, the treat for the everyman, and who doesn't, I saw, a great shirt. It's like, you can't make everyone happy. You're not pizza. And it's just one of those things where, so we're like, all right, so let's do pizza. Because again, the other thing we wanted was whatever cuisine we wanted it to be, have a significant vegetarian focus, but not feel forced. And so, pizza was just, pasta would kind of fit that, but that's not really a brewery thing. And to your point, beer and pizza. So we're like, all right, we're gonna do pizza. But my wife and I grew up in Detroit. And so when we were looking at doing, okay, what type of pizza are you going to do? Well, there's a ton of, wood-fired / Neapolitan. There's some New York style up here, a lot of what they call Greek style, which is kind of like sort of this indigenous New England old school pizza shop type thing. And I think the only people who are more passionate about and sort of have their tribes and sort of wave the flag for their favorites then the beer crew is our pizza people. You know, I mean, you guys, you're from New York, so of course, you know, there's the New York, New Haven argument, you know, that type of thing. So we
I actually
decided,
just learned about New Haven pizza about a week ago, but that's a whole other story. But go on.
Yeah.
oh, I thoroughly enjoy both. They are slightly different, and I'm probably going to get a lot of flack from people for both. But as someone
Yeah.
who did not grow up eating either, they're both great, but they're
I would say that New Haven is a much smaller piece of the pie, no pun intended.
yeah, it's and they cook there's more char.
Yeah.
So they tend to kind of cook theirs more well done. Is sort of, and I think they also tend to use less cheese, probably because of that. But like I said, we just decided to sidestep all that, and we're just gonna do the pizza that my wife and I grew up eating, which is we called it square pizza because I'm sure when you guys go out for a pizza in New York, you don't go out for New York style pizza. You just go out for pizza. And so growing up as a kid in Detroit, you go out and it's like, oh, let's go get pizza. It's like, all right, what do you want, round or square? Because they're different. So you know, Buddy's is sort of like probably what most people know of for square pizza.
Yeah, I think in New York, the square is kind of like referred to as Sicilian style.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Sicilian's a little different. But you're barking up this kind of the same
I mean,
tree.
I actually grew up in Dayton, Ohio, and there's a weird fucked up version of it there where it's just all like little squares.
Yeah.
They cut the whole pizza into squares.
And that's the great thing about
bite-sized
pizza.
pieces.
You know, everyone's got their own take on it.
Yeah.
And you know what? At the end of the day, you're gonna like it. You're gonna enjoy it. You know, it's like it's like a good beer, right? A good slice of pizza just disappears. And so so we decided to do Detroit style because that's what we grew up eating. It's you know, and what was funny is I kept reading stuff during the pandemic. So I've been a sourdough baker forever. You know, not forever. My culture, I think, is about 15 years old. And so it was always a hobby, kind of like home brewing. It was just kind of parallels. It's fermentation, your just ratios are different. And but we during the pandemic, everyone's stress baking and couldn't get yeast. But I'm like, well, I have sourdough, so I just started giving it away to friends. But I started making pizza because I had 2 teenage boys, and you know, I actually broke them of pizza. They actually started asking for salads because I was making so much pizza. But I read about Detroit style and I was like, what the heck is Detroit style? And then I saw the picture. I'm like, oh, it's square pizza. And then, you know, started getting into, and, you know, but like I said, having been a hobbyist as a sourdough baker for a long time, there's definitely sort of its own language to baking, just like there is to brewing. And so I sort of took there's a great write-up in Serious Eats about Detroit style pizza. And that was sort of the launching point, and sort of morphed it with what I remember as a kid, as well as some of the stuff that I thought would be kind of cool and fun, a little bit different. So ours is Detroit style. It's also, though, we really focus a lot on the texture of the pizza. So we really try. So it's for anyone who hasn't seen it, it's a pizza that's baked in a pan. The original
square pan.
It's 10 by 14 were the original pans.
Okay, so like a casserole dish kind of
thing.
Yeah,
and they're steel.
That shape anyway,
yeah. And the shape and the size is because they were parts pans that were stolen from a GM plant up the street from Buddy's Pizza, which is where this originated. And that place is still 6 Mile and Connet. It's, you know, it's still in Detroit. It's been there. You know, Buddy's is kind of very iconic. And so that shape and that size. And apparently they started it, though there was a woman who worked there. So this was like 1946, so just post World War II. All these GIs come back from Europe, and everyone is like doing fish and chips because that's what all these GIs that were stationed in the UK. But a woman who worked there was Sicilian and had married an American GI, came back, and she's like, well, I can teach you how to make pizza. So when you mentioned Sicilian style, it's definitely like that is sort of the origin of Detroit style.
So that is the connective tissue.
Yeah, but it's made out of, you know, what you could get in the Midwest in the mid 1940s. So it's very much for in Detroit, it's bar pizza. It's like, it's not, like I said, it's not fancy stuff. It's just what you eat when you go out. You played a baseball game, it's after softball or whatever. And that's really what we wanted to focus on for the brewery, because that's really kind of our vibe. Is we're very laid back. We tend to be very, neighborhood focused, very, very family friendly. And we just wanted a food that just worked for everyone. And so we're like, we're doing pizza, we're doing Detroit style because, like I said, it's kind of what we grew up with. And plus, no one else out here was really doing it. So we don't run into the as much of the well, this isn't as good as, so and so is in Brooklyn or whatever. It's like, that's fine. It's different. And you got to go into it with that mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I grew up also in the Midwest, but not in Michigan and Indiana. So we
Yes,
didn't have.
we're like the trifecta of Ohio,
Yeah.
Indiana, and Michigan. So
So yeah,
while we're
we
talking
had
about New England, so it's
Yeah.
entirely this is the melting pot of American
goodness.
part of culture.
Goodness.
There's a lot of people from the upper Midwest here in Maine.
Yeah.
And I think in no small part is because winter doesn't scare you.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense.
And so you're like,
Yeah.
all right, and there's more snow here, but it's not as cold.
Right.
So that's kind of the trade-off.
Yeah. And I feel like that's the same with like New York and the Northeast in general, is you get a lot of people from the North or Midwest or Midwest in general, because they're like, yeah, it's cold, but it's not
It's
the Midwest.
manageable.
It's manageable. Yeah. And that's like the great thing is you get all these different types. You get the Detroit pizza, and I'm looking at your menu, and we were talking about lobster earlier, and I was getting hungry. Now I'm reading about Detroit pizza. Now I'm getting hungry.
I mean, I don't really care if Southwest Ohio pizza ever makes it anywhere else, because
it probably won't. But
whenever I'm there, it's like I kind of enjoy it for the nostalgia factor, but I also like, yeah, this isn't great. But I'm sure, hopefully, Detroit pizza, or at least your take on it, is better than that.
Yeah,
no.
it's gone over very well. And and like I said, I think at the end of the day, pizza makes people happy. Beer makes people happy. Let's put these things together.
Exactly. So I have to ask this. What is your perfect beer and pizza pairing? Because you guys serve this at your tap room. Obviously, you love pizza. You were making it too much during the pandemic. So it doesn't have to be a Foundation Brewery beer, but in general, what is your favorite beer to pizza pairing? And then I have a follow-up question after that.
Sure. So I usually go for a really light, crisp, clean lager. There's so much going on with the pizza already. I also want something that's got a little bit of bitterness in the background to kind of, because again, when you take that sip of the beer, it's sort of a reset.
Yeah.
And so you go back in for the next slice, and then you kind of get all those flavors and things going on again. So that's what I tend to gravitate towards for pizza. Spicy food, things like that. I tend to grab IPAs. I think that sort of citrusy, fruity notes tend to work well with heat, so like tacos and things like that. And you mentioned Burnside earlier. That beer actually came. So that's our brown ale. It's actually the
I think I
oldest
actually
beer we
had it
still
with
make.
lobster that night, but I'm not positive. But I probably had it with lobster.
So there's Garrett Oliver wrote a book, The Brewmaster's Table, and I think in it he commented like, if you're going to take one beer to a dinner party and you don't know what they're serving, take a brown ale.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's just like it's super food friendly. It just kind of works its way with anything. And that particular beer came about from a beer dinner we did with a restaurant downtown called Central Provisions, which is a kind of a tapas, small plates joint. Great food. And they opened almost the same time we did. So we kind of met each other as we were just all opening. And I remember talking to Chris. So Chris and Paige Gould are the owners. And we're like, well, we're going to do a beer for the beer dinner. We can make something specific. What do you want? The first thing out of his mouth was, dear God, not another IPA. And And then
I
he's like,
appreciate that sentiment. Yeah.
yeah, well, and he's like, I want a brown ale. He's like, as a chef, I'm looking for something that's going to pair really well with things that are grilled or roasted or smoked,
Mhm.
Things that it's got a little bit of sweetness, but it's not, it's balanced to it. He's like, it just works. So we made Burnside. We made half barrel of it. We never expected to make it again. And then a couple other restaurateurs tried it at Central Provisions because, of course, new restaurant opens, everyone goes checks them out. And I started getting calls from some other folks, mainly Matt Moran, who at the point owned Nosh. And Matt was like, when can I get Burnside? When can I get Burnside? So we made a batch, and then we sold through the whole thing in a week. And then we're like, I guess we're making Burnside. So we've been making it ever since. And we specifically because it is so food friendly. So burgers, steaks, things just it's a bit of a cheat code when it comes to pairings.
Nice.
I'm,
No,
I'm fairly
and
certain the night I had, and I know we don't really have time to get into this whole story, but a bar in my neighborhood or in New York City would do an event called the Maine event where they would have a lot of Maine breweries, and there was a lobster involved if you bought enough of the Maine beers. And I'm pretty sure that's how I celebrated my 48th birthday.
There you go.
there you go. Nice. And I love the story that you made the beer for a special event, and then everyone was like, we need this. And so you're just like, yeah, we're gonna just keep making it. And I feel like that's the very like, especially because like you guys and Will, you guys all started at that 2014, which really for the Northeast was like the jump start of really when craft brewing. And if you look at all the breweries in most of the Northeast and in New York, the older ones are 2014, 2013, like right in that era. And so that's where in the early years, you're making it up. You're like trying to figure out what people want, what people like. And then if people like it, you make more of it. And that's what I love about especially breweries like you guys and Austin Street that come from that era. And same with other ones around that time of you guys love beer and you just continue making beer that people love and it's good beer. So I think that's awesome. I think that's great. And I know we are going long, and I know I want to be mindful of everyone listening and everyone
Yes,
watching, but oh, excuse me.
that's all right.
I did have one last question about the pizza,
Mhm.
John. Pineapple on pizza, yay or nay?
We've done it. It's
That
not
wasn't
my,
an answer.
it's not my personal
Okay,
preference.
okay.
All
No,
right, it's
Oh
not
well,
my
then
personal
I want to
preference.
follow it up with, since it's been a theme for the. What about lobster on pizza?
We've
yeah.
done that too.
All right,
We've
I
done
figured
we've done
you
lobster roll
had to. You
pizza.
have to.
Yeah, yeah.
How was
I
the
mean,
lobster on pizza? Was that good?
it's good. Our pizza is I mean, it's cheese, it's so you got that salty umami, you're blending that. Like if you've ever had a lobster grilled cheese,
Yeah.
Why
it
not?
works.
Why would you not want to do that, especially when you have access to like so much lobster?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's all dead nuts fresh. And
Yeah.
in fact, when I get buy lobster, literally my neighbor down the street just he fishes, and so we'll just call him up, and he's like, sure, what do you want, and da da da, and then he'll leave them in a
Yeah.
cooler, and you just drop the money and go.
Nice. So I do want to be mindful of everyone's time, but John, anything that you want to plug for Foundation Brewery and moving forward of what we can expect and where we can find you guys as well.
Yeah, so we're primarily so Maine obviously is our biggest footprint. We're 3 statewide here, through New Hampshire and through Massachusetts. That's who we distribute with regularly. We do work with Serene down in Connecticut and New York and New Jersey, and we typically ship beer down there, kind of like Will was saying, sort of mixed pallets. That's usually about every 2-3 months type of thing. And we a couple times a year also send beer down to like DC, that area as well. But for the most part, you're going to find us up here in really sort of New England, particularly, Boston, Boston North. And we're in, like I said, Rhode Island as well. We're not in Vermont. We were for a little bit, but we just kind of like, we really got to focus on what we're doing.
Wow.
And so we sort of pulled
They're
back.
so close. I'm surprised.
Vermont's, I mean, it's weird. You look at a map, it's so close,
Yeah.
but the classic, you can't get there from here.
Okay.
It is so much easier to go north-south than it is to go east-west in northern New England.
That's wild. Yeah.
But yeah, it's been, I love Vermont. I've spent more than a little bit over there camping.
Well,
But
at least since you can't really distribute there, anytime you go to visit your friends there, you can always take your beer, and they won't be able to get it when they're there. So
yeah, I mean, it's part of my brother lives in Michigan. He and his family will hit Vermont, will come over, and that's where we meet up. So it's a good time.
cool.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, any last minute questions from the chat? Glenn, I think we have touched everything. I think we have drank, not that I think, we have drank two fantastic beers.
We definitely have.
We've touched everything from lobster to pizza to Detroit to Vermont to literally everything. Learning all about all these different breweries, different beers. John, thank you so much for these fantastic beers. I gonna crack open the other ones here very, very soon. Maybe not tonight, but soon. Super excited for all these. And I think we're gonna call it a night. We're gonna call it a cheers. For anyone
Thanks
that's
for listening, everyone.
Yeah.
I will say, if you want to listen to, I'm always happy to be on this one. I'm also on the Beer Vengers podcast. You can find it, the Beer Vengers, at the Beer Vengers. Who knows? Maybe I'll actually tell the longer version of that story on a future episode of that show. And Jonathan might actually be on it with us.
Never know.
And if you want to find that Austin Street beer that I was talking about, and you're in New York, go to Sweet Avenue. That's the bar I was talking about. Yes, I'm friends with the owner. Yes, he's been a guest on our show. But yes, they carry some wonderful Maine beers. Sweet Avenue, right off of the 7 train.
And if you're listening and you haven't gotten your box yet, go to shop.citybrewtours.com, get this box, because as you heard, can't always get the beer locally. So get it. And we're going to come back with another great city next month. We are switching for all of our viewers and listeners. We are switching to the third Tuesday of every month moving forward to ensure, because shipping has been crazy lately, make sure everyone gets their beer in time for when we do the live stream. So we will be adjusting that moving forward, but we'll see you next month. We'll see you next time. John, thank you so much, and we'll see everyone soon. All right.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.